So today, here we are again with another little Cummins problem. Not getting fuel, not getting the high pressure fuel rail pressure, of course. So some of the common things that go bad, we've already been through. We wanted to make sure that the check valve, we've actually found some dirt in it and some little pieces of metal. So we replaced that with a new. And then the electric fuel delivery pump, which acts in place of the old primer, which comes on and runs for just 30 seconds prior to running the engine. Change that, because while you're behind that ECM, you might just as well. It's time well spent. So anyways, we're trying to determine if this lift pump is okay. A lift pump is supposed to deliver 60 psi to the high pressure pump, and we're not seeing it. So we've already verified that the accessory drive and everything turns. This is all working properly. So we just wanted to bench test this. So I have my gauge set up here, and I was prepared with a drill to get it primed up, but it primed up really quick. So we're pulling fuel out of this gallon jug. Just made a couple of temporary Rube Goldberg hookups here, and I put this rubber hose on with a clamp to this drive. It's a rectangular square type deal, and I put this socket in here. I was going to use the electric drill. I don't really need it, because as you can see, just rotating the shaft back and forth, I can actually build half of what I need. I need 60 psi, and it goes up to 30 just by cranking it with my hand. And then when I rotate the shaft back and forth, it just does that. So it's like there's no miss, there's no slippage in between the gears. She has to be a pretty good seal. I'm gonna rule out this lift pump, and I think a lot of people just go ahead and change them because they didn't know any way to test them. So if anybody wants to know, this is just a really simple, cheap and dirty way to test the lift pump in a ISC. Thanks, bye. Adding to this same video, this stupid Cummins here, we did the bench test in there, and now we're doing the bench test on the truck. So we have the fuel line from the fuel filter where let me start over. We got the fuel line coming from the primer pump, the little electric pump, and we're getting 15 psi there when we turn the key on. And then when we crank this, I gotta go the right way. When we spin this with the drill, I'll spin it slowly for starters, and then remember, this would have had the fuel pushed there by the electric pump, but we haven't turned the key on. So I'm just doing it as if there's no, and I'm spinning it faster than the motor will go, but it will not go above 15 psi. So now I'm going to have Mike go turn the key on and have that supply fuel. Yeah, we got to turn the key off for a few seconds so it'll reset, and then that electric pump, which is behind the ECM down underneath that mess, comes on. Okay, so hold her up there. Okay, so he's at 15 psi now. You can see it on the, turn the gauge just a little bit, the sun's bothering. All right, angle it a little different. That's now. All right, I'll do this. Now I got fuel supply, and I put it right up over 60 pounds before my Rube Goldberg attachment here came apart. So I cannot fault this pump. I cannot fault the filter housing, any of the lines behind the injector rail. We are going to the next step. Alright, so this is the next step we're going to try. Yeah, turn the key on. Okay, there's the electric pump, bringing it from the fuel tank to the lift pump. Alright, anytime you want, you can crank it. Don't look like it's coming up very fast. It's coming up slowly though. It's coming up slowly. Yeah. No. Now what's the difference here? Still pushing against my gauge, nothing else. The engine's turning it. Is there possible something in there slipping? Now we got to check inside the accessory drive again. Unbelievable. Well, this should be the final part of this video taking here. We're going to merge it all together. After all that testing, and as far as I could see, that pump was doing what it was supposed to do. We put it back on the engine and it would not build. So we went ahead and took a leap of faith and got the pump. Sure enough. Give her a wheel, Mike. So even though it goes against 11,000 on the scanner, that went up to 11,000 pounds. I'm sure after it warmed up and idled, probably the pressure would come down a little, and then if you're on the middle of a hill pulling a load, it'll go up probably to 21,000. But at least now she runs. And the funny part about it is, I don't know what was wrong with the other pump. And if you're short on cash or you want to be careful with your customers' money, it's tough. Like us, we gave up at least a couple of hours of DG time that I'm not going to charge him for, because I'm going to use it as an object learning lesson. That if it points at the pump, even though the pump seems to be okay, in this case it really was the pump. And like I said, I don't know why. It seemed to be working fine. And on the bench, but on the truck the stupid thing wouldn't work. So all good to go now. Buy yourself a pump. So, being of an inquisitive nature, I am. I know the truck's running, I should be just satisfied, but I had to know if anybody's run into this before. This pump, like I said, is basic. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. It's just a basic 101, gear pump 101. It has to have a pressure relief valve right there, because otherwise it would just run away and build pressure until it broke something. So I understand it'd have to have a pressure relief valve, and it's set for 60 pounds, I'm sure, maybe a little more. Book says it has to have 60 pounds before the high pressure pump will take it. So maybe testing it on the bench, it seemed to work fine. It was quick in reacting, and it picked up the fuel, and twisting it by hand, a little tiny slow RPM, it would build plenty of pressure. But maybe when it is bolted on the truck, the thing spins it up to 60 psi, and instead of staying there and holding it constantly, maybe the pressure relief valve just let go. So because I couldn't hold it at 60 psi on the bench test unless I used a drill on it, and I didn't really want to just keep doing that. So I thought we were good. But the pressure relief valve is not available from what I could see talking to the dealers. They wanted to send me just a pump, so I said, send me the pump. We put it on, and everything's good. Starts and runs, and everything's fine. So anybody that's interested, Cummins guys maybe, that can tell me, oh yeah, we work on them all the time, and that's a common problem. I mean, next time maybe I can save some DG time. We did have some deteriorated hoses we thought were a problem, and also somebody had originally, before we seen it, had bypassed the primary filter on the frame. So we had our suspicions right off the get-go. But ultimately, this is what fixed it. And I'd be open to some comments and some discussion from Cummins guys or diesel guys in general that maybe have seen this before. So she's running fine now. We're all good. And catch you later. Thanks. If you'd like to comment, why don't you subscribe so I know who I'm talking to, and that helps. Thank you. Bye. So in all fairness, I got to see this thing all the way through to the end. So we determined what we had for a problem. Finally ended up changing that lift pump. Put that lift pump on, it started right up. As I've already said. Then we went ahead and we found we wanted to change the lines because they had bypassed the fuel filter, the primary fuel filter, for some reason. And if you can look down this connection, of course, all rotted, but you can see a little flapper in there, the inside of the hose breaking down. So we saw that and we went ahead and changed all the lines and put brand new, I think he used Stratoflex, I'm not sure, brand new all the way back to the tank, and we bypassed that secondary filter. Somebody had disconnected that years ago for whatever reason, and they tapped it. So we took those lines out. We told the guy just change the filter more regularly, but it hasn't had that filter on there for years. So maybe the fuel got contaminated, hurt the inside of that rubber, I don't know, but we changed it all. Lo and behold, went to try to start it, nothing, no fuel pressure again. So I don't know just why, but somehow it must have drained back. So we discovered another little trick. This thing doesn't have any hand pumps or any place to really bleed it good. So inside, here's where the fuel goes up to the high pressure pump. That's where we've been checking. We need to see at least 60 to 70 pounds per square inch. And we did not see it until there's a pressure relief valve right there. I was able to get it real good with my curved wrench in there underneath the pipe, and I opened it up and we cycled the key 2 or 3 times until we started seeing foam and air, and then I started closing it slowly, and then we cranked it. The thing took right off, and it's running like this. It never missed a beat. So obviously the fuel rail itself was still full of fuel, and the pump itself must have been. But you need to see 60 to 70 pounds coming out of this line going into the pump, or else this thing will not run. And that's how we finally discovered. So at that time we were running out of a 5-gallon pail still. So just to be sure that we don't have a problem with the standpipe, which we have already checked, but we just double checking everything at this point. We let it run for 20 minutes, got up the temperature. Now we shut it off, disconnected the fuel line out of pulled it out of the 5-gallon can and connected it back to the tank. Now she's running on that, and the customer originally complaint was that he was idling in a yard doing a job, and he says suddenly shut off. They went back and cranked it, and it started right up. Ran for a few minutes, and it shut off again. And then he didn't trust it anymore, so he got in it and drove it over to our shop. And then that's when we tried to start it. We got it started, brought it in the shop, and it didn't run again until we found the problem. So somehow it was picking up air. We got an idea now that those hoses, it was porous, and air was coming through the hoses. But we still won't be 100% sure. If you don't see any more to this video, you'll know we're all set. But that's a good place if you think you've lost your fuel and can't get it back. Bleed it right from there. Technically speaking, you shouldn't really have to, because the fuel injectors won't open unless they have enough pressure. The ECM won't command them open. So I don't know. It's been a horror show. But if anybody has the same problem, maybe this will help. Hopefully I'm done with this.